Men's hockey at the 2026 Winter Olympics has been crazy so far. There's been so much entertainment within the last couple of days, just from the group stage alone, that this has been a phenomenal tournament already, and we're now approaching the knockout rounds, which means the stakes are only going to get higher. Hi everyone, my name is King Gratz, welcome back to the channel guys, and today we're going to be doing a review of the group stage for men's hockey at the 2026 Winter Olympics, as well as an overview of how the knockout rounds are going to go, and me briefly explaining my predictions for a second time for this tournament, and seeing what I think is going to happen. I hope you guys enjoy, and we're going to start things off here with Group A. We've got, in the order, this is the official IIHF standings. We got Canada, Switzerland, Czechia, and France. As you can see, Canada had a very good showing in this tournament, 9 points, 3 regulation wins. Spoiler alert, they're really the only top tier country that has actually played up to expectations so far. Everyone in the roster has been playing great, from the old guard and like Sidney Crosby. Connor McDavid's having a great performance. The new guys who were not on the Four Nations roster have also chipped in. We're looking at Nick Suzuki, Tom Wilson, for example. And for Canada, they also finished as the #1 country in the tournaments from the group stage. So therefore, they basically will have not only a first round bye to the quarters, but they will also act as the home team in practically every contest. Switzerland finishes in second here. I thought that Switzerland had a sneaky good tournament. They were fairly productive. I think that maybe a lot of people didn't really look at them so much in the group stage, but they had a shutout on France. Yes, they had a tough performance against Canada, and they did lose Kevin Fiala to that season-ending injury, which really sucks for him. But they had a showing against the Czechs that was very good. That game was very entertaining. It went all the way to overtime, and they got the extra point, which allowed them to finish in second. For the Czechs, a bit of a disappointment if you ask me. I was expecting that, like most people, they would be like the prime dark horse candidate for this tournament. And the fact that, they didn't have a great showing against Canada, they came out flat in that game. In the game against France, they also looked a bit shaky, and the French basically gave them a tough time, more or less, until the Czechs finally pulled away from them. And in the game against Switzerland, they were basically like neck and neck with them, and then when it mattered most in clutch time, they just didn't get things done. And for France, 3 regulation losses. They had a decent time in this tournament so far. 5 goals for, but 20 goals against. Outside of the Canada game, though, I thought that they did pretty good. Yes, in the Switzerland game, they were shut out, but they did hold their own defensively for the most part in that game. And for the game against Czechia, they were fairly productive on offense. They were able to have a lead against the Czechs at one point, and were giving them a bit of a scare. And then later in the game, obviously, things fell apart. But I think for France, it was an admirable performance. The players knew that most countries probably took them for granted and basically didn't respect them, and they didn't care. They played their hearts out. And I think for them, it was a good enough showing. Moving on to Group B, this is definitely the biggest surprise of the tournament so far. We've got Slovakia finishing first, Finland is in second, Sweden is third, and Italy is fourth. We actually had a 3-way tie for first place here in this group, but Slovakia ends up winning it because of the goal differential tiebreaker. For Slovakia, though, really good performance from them. For a country that doesn't have that many NHLers, on paper, I thought that they were probably going to be more of a third place team here, but definitely surprising everyone, taking advantage of both Sweden and Finland kind of underperforming so far. Juraj Slafkovsky looks like a borderline MVP candidate in this tournament right now. He's been playing great, and practically everyone in this roster has stepped up, and it's huge for them. And for Slovakia, they do get a bye into the quarters, and they're going to be the home team in that game. For Finland, that slow start in that first game against Slovakia, which they lost, they rebounded pretty nicely there. They were able to take down Sweden in their second game, and then they crushed Italy like 11-0, which is quite a ridiculous score. At the end of the day, it didn't really matter, and that's because Sweden basically fumbled the bag at the last moment. Sweden, who were probably favorites to win this group, they ended up winning their first game, but not very convincingly, as the Italians were able to hang around in that game. Then they disappointed against Finland and didn't really do much. And then against Slovakia, yes, they won that game, but because the Slovaks were able to score that last-minute goal by Dalibor Dvorsky, that was enough for the Slovaks to actually win the group. So really, for Sweden, they fumbled the bag for this group. I thought for sure that they would win this, and definitely it was an underperformance by them. And then last but not least for Italy here, yes, there's 3 regulation losses, but I think the Italians were pretty impressive for a country that has basically no NHL experience whatsoever. They played pretty good. They played their hearts out. They were very committed to defense. Yes, the offense wasn't really there, but they were able to give Sweden a scare, and they hung in around with Slovakia for the majority of that game and only lost it at the last moment. It was really the Finland game that's just an eyesore that kind of really impacts the tournament for them. But I think at the end of the day for Italy, it was a pretty decent performance, and you couldn't really ask for much from them. Moving on to Group C, USA is number 1, Germany is number 2, Denmark is number 3, and Latvia is number 4. This tournament for this group has been a little bit more interesting than I expected. Yes, the Americans still win this group, which was expected by most people, 3 wins in regulation, but they didn't seem really convincing. The first game against Latvia, they looked like that they were slow, they were kind of out of place, and that they were basically falling into Latvia's plan, basically. And it really wasn't until the third period that things really started getting in America's favor. For Germany, they were fairly consistent, I want to say, in this tournament, but also a bit of a disappointment. They beat Denmark pretty nicely, but then they got upset by Latvia in their second game, and then they got blown out by the US. And then for Denmark, I thought they had a nice rebound to finish third, beating Latvia in their one game in this tournament, and they also gave the Americans a good scare. And for Latvia, a bit of a disappointment for me. I kind of thought that they would be a little bit better than this. The fact that they were only able to get 3 points in one win, that's really kind of sucks for them. Let's just hope that they do work their way through in the qualification round and at least maybe make things interesting. So these are what the qualification matchups and the quarterfinal matchups are going to be. As you can see on Tuesday, we're going to have our qualification games. We've got Switzerland versus Italy, Germany versus France, Sweden versus Latvia, and Czechia versus Denmark. And then based on the winners of those games, they're going to play either one of Canada, US, Slovakia, or Finland. So Canada would play the winner between the Danes and Czechs. The winner between the Latvians and the Swedes would play the Americans. The Slovaks would get either Germany or France, and the Finns will either get the Swiss or the Italians. I'm going to try and predict the tournament moving forward now. So for the qualification matchups, I'm going to probably just go with the obvious here. So for Switzerland versus Italy, the Swiss should certainly win this game. For Italy, it was a nice ride, but the talent gap is quite extreme, and the Swiss have been slowly ramping up in this tournament as time has gone on, so I think they should be pretty good here. Germany should probably beat France, as expected, with the talent situation and the fact that the Germans probably are looking for a bit of consistency after the group stage was kind of meh for them. I'll say Sweden beats Latvia. I think Sweden needs something to prove. They have to show that they are up there with the top countries, and the game against Latvia would be a nice tune-up for them to kind of rebound. And then I'm going to say the Czechs are going to win over Denmark. I think that the Czechs also have something to prove right now, and they have to rebound from a disappointment in the group stage. And the game against Denmark is probably the most difficult when it comes to the qualification round to really predict, because the Danes have been pretty good in this tournament despite not having too much NHL talent. I think Frederik Andersen's been great in goal, and they've gotten meaningful contributions from most of their European players. For the Czechs, however, I think that maybe the big guys like Tomáš Hertl and David Pastrnak are going to finally push through for them. If Lukas Dostal is still going to be playing at 100% and is on the ball with things, then I think the Czechs probably win that matchup too. Based on that, we would have in the quarters on the right, Canada versus Czechia, US versus Sweden, Slovakia versus Germany, and then Finland versus Switzerland. I'll start with Canada beating the Czechs. I think that right now the Canadians are the team to beat at this moment. They are the most consistent of the top countries. They have been firing on all cylinders from day one of this tournament. If we do get a rematch between them and the Czechs, I still think that it's just going to be a rerun of last time, but maybe it will be a lot closer. For USA Sweden, I'll say this. I'm going to probably go with a hot take, and I'm going to say the Swedes beat the US, because if Sweden does rebound in their game against Latvia and they show that they are once again kind of returning to that strong, effective offense, and if their goaltending really shuts things down, then I really do think that if the Americans are still stumbling by this point, that Sweden could actually beat them. That's just me kind of looking at the moment right now. I thought that the US would be like completely firing on all cylinders by this point in the tournament, but being as inconsistent as they were in the group stage, I have my doubts now about them. For Slovakia and Germany, I'm going to take the Slovaks. I think that the way how they've been playing right now has been very impressive, and I think that that team mentality is just going to continue working for them through this tournament. And, you know, as much talent Germany has at this point, I think that the Slovaks, with their Olympic experience from their younger guys and for their European veterans, I think that's just going to help them pull through here. And then last but not least, for Finland versus Switzerland, I'm going to take Finland as well. I think Finland also continues their redemption arc, if you will, after a bit of a stumble in the group stage. And for Switzerland, as much as I want to root for the underdog here, I just think that the Finns probably will rebound and make this a one and done situation for them. So based on results that I have here in my predictions, and knowing that there's going to be a reseeding for the semifinals, this is what the semifinals are going to look like. So we have Canada versus Sweden, and then Finland would face Slovakia for what would basically be the second time in this tournament. I would probably say that Canada would beat Sweden. I think that once again, the Canadians now are probably the team to beat. And despite Sweden being like in a rebounding state by this point in time, I still think that Canada and their overall effectiveness on both offense and defense, I think that they probably would beat Sweden, even if Sweden is at its peak here. I do think that this will be a really close game, though, so it would be very fun to see this in action. And then for Finland and Slovakia, I'm going to give this one to Finland. I think that Finland gets their revenge on the Slovaks, and I think that they would probably learn from their mistakes in that first game, and knowing that they need to start on time and that they need to be conscious of their situation and how they're playing, because the Slovaks definitely capitalized on Finland's mistakes in that first game. So I think Finland can definitely learn from that and work through and win this semifinal if this is how the matchup is. Therefore, you have Sweden versus Slovakia in the bronze medal game. I would say that Sweden probably wins that. On paper, they obviously have the better roster, and Sweden would probably want to rebound from a semifinal loss against Canada and would probably try to beat up on Slovakia to get the bronze medal. And then Canada versus Finland for the gold medal game, that's how it would go. And I'll probably just say that Canada would win that matchup 9 times out of 10, and that's simply because, you know, they're the better country, they are much more effective. I think that they would probably exploit Finland's like heavier and like defensive minded defense, and probably just try to exploit that with speed and hockey IQ, and that's where I would go. So I would say Canada would win gold, Finland would win silver, and Sweden would take bronze. So that's it from me. I hope you guys enjoy the tournament. I'll see you guys next time.